What do you think about sweets? I remember thinking like, please don't give my 2-year-old a lollipop at the bank. I personally wanted to just kind of like avoid the intense sweets for a little while I had some sort of control over it because I knew they would love it. And so
Mhm.
might as well just kind of postpone that for a little while was kind of my way of
Mhm.
thinking. What are some recommendations for parents in approaching sweets from maybe little kids to then older kids?
Yeah. So I agree with minimal sweets in those very early years. Um,
Because I
you know,
imagine it can change the palate, right? Like
it can. Well,
for what
so
they like.
yeah, so babies are already born accustomed to sweet flavors. Amniotic fluid is sweet. If mothers breastfeed, then breast milk is sweet too. And so that palate or that taste for sweetness is already sort of inherent when babies are born. So I think it makes a lot of sense to hold off as long as you can. And I think of it through sort of this nutrient lens. We know that toddlers and young children have very high nutrient needs and tiny, tiny tummies. So there's not a lot of room in their diet for things like sweets. That being said, I'm all about the first year birthday cake. I think that's a lovely experience for children. All of mine had it. I also recognize that as you have more children, more than one or two, those little children are going to get exposed to sweets earlier and earlier by their older siblings. What I would say, though, about sweets is that a lot of families struggle with sweets in terms of where can they show up in the day? Are they taking over my child's diet? And so I feel and encourage a lot of my clients to have a strategy for sweets, to really know when you want to include them, because I don't think that they should be excluded. I know that there's plenty of research that suggests when we get too controlling around sweets or too restrictive, children tend to want them more and start to compensate for not having them without, feeling pressured or feeling bad about having them. Oftentimes children will sneak them, will hide them, will go overboard at other friends' houses or other parties. And so I don't think restricting sweets is the way to go. I do think predictable exposure to sweets is sort of the thing that is so powerful, because you can tell your child at the beginning of the week, we're having dessert on these days. You're having treats at soccer game. You can actually sort of forecast when the sweets are all happening and let your child know, again, building in predictability, security. Kids get a little nervous when they don't know when they're having their sweets. They get a little
Mm.
nervous when they're in trouble for having sweets. And so I think a healthy way of handling it is just treating it like every other food, and even though as adults we know they're not they're not on the same level as fruits and vegetables, right? But they're highly desirable foods, and normalizing them as part of everyday or weekly eating, and allowing your child to have some say over what those sweets are going to be, and being sort of curating the timing and the exposure for your child so that they feel calm and comfortable. Because if you're not having sweets on Tuesdays and your child asks for sweets, you can say, we're not having sweets on Tuesdays. We have sweets tomorrow. Wednesday's a dessert night, so we're having dessert. What are you thinking? I'm thinking brownies. Are you thinking ice cream? Let's make that decision together.